Good afternoon, Rick. My name is Michael Harrison. I'm a member of the Ford's Colony Nominating Committee. First, thank you for volunteering to participate in this process to become a community volunteer, which is needed to help our community thrive. Welcome to this candidate forum, where you will be offered an opportunity to share with the community your thoughts on issues that impact residents here in Ford's Colony and how you might participate in working these issues as a potential member of the Ford's Colony Board of Directors. We have prepared several questions today for you to respond to so that our community has an opportunity to understand your perspective on key issues and how you might approach problem solving and making decisions as a board member. Because of the wide range of topics, we ask that you try to limit your responses to 2 minutes per question. We will give you a 30-second reminder when you approach that 2-minute time limit. And with that, unless you have some questions, we'll get started. Is that okay?
No questions here, Michael.
All right. A major issue from the annual survey was the concept of Ford's Colony becoming more of a multi-age range community. Several voices have made comments about the lack of facilities, programming, and events for families with younger children. How do you see the board of directors acting to address this particular issue?
Well, first of all, I think the board needs to understand exactly what that portion of the community in that life stage is concerned about. The things I saw in the annual survey related to better facilities. Well, two things. One, better facilities here within Ford's Colony, such as a physical fitness facility. They were interested in having the pool open more hours for a longer portion of the year, perhaps a heated pool. There was also, I think, another concern which stood out, and that was that activities which are sponsored by the Homeowners Association or through the Homeowners Association be geared not just to adults, but to families and younger children. In other words, concerts and other things that the community might sponsor. Communication, I think, is a key issue here. The communications that exist now are basically, from my perspective, geared really towards the broad spectrum of the community and don't take into consideration any one particular group. And if we want to understand that younger segment of the population, as best I can tell, that's about 400 homes in the community, we really need to be targeting the communications towards that group, or communications that group can respond to, and whether it's texts or some portion of the website that's geared to that portion of the population, a group on Facebook, emails, text, etc. Those are all ways that we can reach out to that community and get them to respond and better understand their needs, and also to understand what the board is, the balancing act that the board has to do with the budget, and then try to work to meet the needs that they're expressing.
Okay. You know, Rick, another question that probably gets an equal amount of attention as the issue of multi-age range residents is this one. The current board has represented that the CCF, or the capital contribution fee proposal, is an initiative to offset unknown maintenance and unforeseen capital costs associated with the aging infrastructure of Ford's Colony. How would you explain this strategic financial effort to residents that are asking questions about it?
Seems to me that there are at least two aspects to it. One, and the driving factor, is that the majority of the community is interested in both maintaining the facilities we have, maintaining the community, the common areas, the the usual things that the community has to take care of, but also in enhancing the community through the sort of amenities that we talked about just a minute ago, as well as better facilities. That all costs money. We all are concerned about the maintaining dues that are reasonable and appropriate. So I'm sure that the board is looking for other sources of income. And the CCF is something that would provide an additional stream of income without being a burden on the current residents or homeowners. In other words, this is a fee that would be paid by people buying home or property, not just houses, but also vacant land in Ford's Colony, that they would pay upon purchasing into the community. So it would be a contribution from people coming into the community. Now, on top of that, if you compare Ford's Colony to comparable communities around Williamsburg area, you'll see that what the board is proposing is actually less of a burden than comparable fees for CCF type fees that are charged by those communities. So it seems to me that this is a reasonable way to raise additional funding to enhance Ford's Colony without burdening current residents, and doing it in a way that isn't onerous in comparison to what some of the fees are in other communities.
Rick, thank you very much for that detailed response. And it's a good segue into the next question. You know, board membership requires significant skill in the art of compromise to achieve collective decision making, which means effective listening, empathy, and flexibility. Can you describe any experience of being associated with a team of strong-willed individuals and how you had to interface with them to solve a common problem?
I think maybe the best example would be when I became the deputy director of the Engineer Research and Development Center. That's the R&D arm of the Corps of Engineers. Traditionally, they were 7 independent laboratories, each with a strong SES laboratory director who prized their independence, let's say. And my job was this ERDC, ERDC, was a newly created organization, and the idea was to take these 7 independent core laboratories and make a corporate laboratory out of them. So, and that was part of my job, was the change management and strategic planning that went along with that. So working with the directors, we set up a set of overall goals, but the implementation was the sticky part. And so I assigned one of my deputies to work directly with the counterparts in the various laboratories, in all 7 laboratories, and within the framework that had been laid out as to what we were trying to accomplish, if you know, left boundary, right boundary from a military standpoint, this was our mission within those boundaries. And they worked out the details, the how-to, as long as they came up with the result, the endpoint that we were searching for. And so that was a balancing act, which over a period of 5 years really took those 7 labs, turned them into a corporate lab. We won Lab of the Year 3 times in 6 years. And I understand that they're now 15 years later, they're still using many of those same processes that we developed.
That sounds like that was a pretty tough issue. As we look at making this community better, we have candidates that have lived here in Ford's Colony for quite a length of time. What improvements, based on your time here, do you think are needed to make our community better?
Well, I'm in that 61 to 75 group that in the survey is the group that's most satisfied with the way things are in Ford's Colony. I think we've already talked about one of the areas that needs improvement, and that's reaching out to the component of our community in the under 61 who are still working, have families, and there are needs that they have which are different from those of us who are fully retired and can access these facilities during the day and have a lot of those types of interests. So I think that's one aspect, is reaching out to that multi-generational community, and the people over 75 also, the retirees over 75 have another set of special needs, special interests, special needs, if you will, that we need to take into account. So those are the two kinds of improvements that I think need to be done, need to be made. So there are clearly those issues. Now there are a couple of other issues that I think that came up out of the survey. One of them had to do with enhancing the importance that and the effectiveness that the community sees in the governance by the board of directors and the HOA. So that's an area I think clearly where we can also improve. And then there are those issues also with certain areas in the community that where the maintenance can be enhanced. I think around some of the ponds, there are some issues that need to be taken care of. And I think the final issue is we also need to address the issue of speeding in a balanced way, as well as the enforcement of the covenants in a balanced way. Those are all issues that came up in the survey that I think people recognize and that we need to take into account.
You know, Rick, as I think about your responses, it sort of begs the next question. What was one of the key reasons that drove you to decide to run for an open board seat?
I think the thing was that the thing that struck me about running for the board was that the community was reaching out to try to find people that would be engaged and could take on this type of responsibility. I'm the secretary. I'm on the board of directors for the Westport Neighborhood Association, the secretary of the association. I've had some interactions with the board with regard to the WNA maintenance agreement and with regard to the park at Westport construction, the 40 lots that they're going to have at the or 14 lots that they're going to have at the Centerville Road entrance to Westport. So, and I've watched how the board operates, and given my experience, I think I'm in a position where I could contribute. I'm sure there are plenty of other people that can contribute as well, but if there's a need, I'm happy to step up and do my best.
Well, thank you. What three priorities would you suggest as being the most important for the board of directors to focus on for the next year?
I think that's an easy one, Michael, because they're the enduring goals, the enduring issues that are associated with this community and pretty much any community. The first one is making sure that Ford's Colony remains a desirable place to live for the current residents and for future residents. That involves, there are a lot of subsidiary goals under that, making sure that the community is well maintained, that the common areas remain attractive, that it's a safe and secure community, that they can handle emergencies well for the people within the community, and that the board has the best interests of the community at heart. That's what they're looking for. So, and that the board communicates effectively with the residents so that they know what the residents are, so that the residents know what the board is doing, what their motivation is, and the board knows what the community needs. I think the second one has to do with maintaining our property values. This is probably the largest asset most of us have. our homes and our land here in Ford's Colony. So that has to be maintained and enhanced if as much as possible. And again, there are many subsidiary goals that feed from that. The last thing I would mention is that we have to continue making prudent investments in Ford's Colony, and we have to do that through disciplined fiscal management of our budget. And the budget this year is going to be about $6.9 million. Ford's Colony is a community of around, I think it's close to 6,000 people. And that according to the government, that ranks us as a medium-sized town. So, and while doing all of that, we have to make sure that the HOA dues and fees remain reasonable and appropriate to what we're trying to do. And that's a difficult balancing act, and that's why I think it's one of the most important goals for the board.
You know, Rick, as you think about that comment, goals for the board and how do you balance things, many of the Ford's Colony volunteer committees are having a very difficult time recruiting members. How would you, as a member of the board, address this particular problem?
Well, I think the only way you can address that is through communications and outreach. I think everybody on the board, using whatever resources are available, identify where there are vacancies and get that information out through things like Talk of the Colony, through the website, the FCHA.org, through emails. But I think the one thing that I haven't seen done and might help people a little bit is I have not seen the board actually, or anybody actually, do targeted recruiting in terms of explaining to people what's required, what's involved, what sort of skills they're looking for. How many meetings would you have a year? I mean, people may wonder, well, wait a minute, if I volunteer for this, I'm going to be so tied up that I won't have time to do other things. They may be concerned about that. So why don't you explain? We should be reaching out and explaining to them, these are the duties that you would be fulfilling. This is the sort of skills that we need. And it's probably going to take you whatever number of hours per month, including meeting times. And try to make people not only aware of the need, but comfortable with what they would have to do.
Okay, thank you. There has been a view, and some might even say past tense, that Ford's Colony will not replicate amenities that are available in the surrounding community, things such as a dog park, a gym, year-round swimming capacity, or a special events hall for theater, music, social gatherings, or, where cosmetics are very important. As you know, our current amenities are somewhat limited to meeting rooms at the swim and tennis club with seasonal swimming available. What are your feelings and thoughts on this subject?
I understand the need that these people are identifying. I think this is really one of the tougher issues, and I saw all of that in the annual survey. And frankly, Michael, I don't have a real solution for that one. It comes down to priorities and funding. I think you can look at ways to perhaps make one of the pools year-round. For instance, when we lived in Bel Air, Maryland, the Bel Air Athletic Club actually had a, not inflatable, but it was a semi-rigid structure that they put up in the winter to cover their pool, actually pools. And those were large pools with competition lanes and whatnot. So I think something like that, rather than building a new facility, might be investigated, but it's still going to cost money, and that's going to have to go into the budget. So I believe that I think the best way to approach this is look at alternative ways to achieve these goals, and then determine exactly how much that's going to cost. And at that point, we have to decide, will the community as a whole support it?
Well, thank you. Tough issue. Final question for you, Rick. How would you handle an issue in the community where there are very strong divergent viewpoints? The issue that comes to mind at present would be pickleball and tennis. How do you see yourself working these potential issues with fellow board members if you were a board member?
Well, I know what the board has done so far, and honestly, I approve of their approach. And I think they're doing everything they can to come up with an equitable solution to that issue. They, first of all, created a task force, including a representative from pickleball and from tennis. I think that was a good first step. The intent was to actually look at the usage, because both sides, I was in the meetings where this issue was discussed, and both sides had their views as to the usage of the current facilities. What they were going to do, what they're going to do is determine exactly how much these facilities are currently used and by which groups. They're even installing, I think, a new camera in the parking lot at the swim and tennis club, and directing it so that it will cover that portion, that portion of the facility, and they can monitor what goes on without having somebody there all the time. So I think all of that is a good answer, a good solution, a good first step. In the end, they're going to have to make a decision as to what to do. I understand that those facilities are due to be refurbished in 23, and so their actions are really geared toward that time frame. It's ultimately they're going to have to make a hard decision, and it's going to have to be that decision is going to have to be defensible based on data. And it's going to have to be done emotionally, even though I expect some group is going to be disappointed. In the end, the longer term perspective, I think we need to be, that's one of the facilities issues we need to be looking at in amenities. The way pickleball is growing, you may well want to invest perhaps over in the Westbury Park area in some additional courts that are specifically designed for pickleball.
Okay. Well, Rick, this concludes the prepared questions for this process. I'd like to thank you very much on behalf of the nominating committee and the board of directors for your thoughtful answers and for taking the time to run for an open board seat. I mean, that's what makes this community great. People who are willing to step into the arena, such as yourself. So all the best to you as we go through this process.
Thank you, Michael.